this is what we're going to show you, and this is a bit of an eye chart for me, but it all kind of makes sense. So the concept here is that somebody in the SAP world either creates an invoice or makes an adjustment to one. At that point, in this workflow that I'm going to show you, Compleo is involved. That's one of our products. So the user initiates the request for the invoice to be sent. It goes through some Compleo processes to pull the information out of SAP via something called our RFC connector that is needed to assemble the invoice. Then that information is handed back to Compleo, which then passes it through a design tool to format the rough draft. The rough draft of the invoice goes optionally to a review stage. This is not required, but if you wanted to have some kind, or if you must have some internal process to ensure that the invoice is valid, correct, and approved, you can have a phase where that's verified. Once the reviewer verifies it, it goes to your customer, that's this line. It goes to SAP, that's this line. And it also goes to an external portal where you can track the progress towards payment of the invoice. And we're looking at a form. And you could change any one of these fields in order to achieve a revised invoice. But just for example, I'll change the quantity ordered on one of the or both of the items. So we'll go ahead and we'll make a couple of changes here. And as soon as I save it, what happens behind the scenes is that the information is passed to supervisor. Oops, let me get that going here for you. So this is supervisor, this is our product now. So this process here is monitoring the user exit that was just passing the request for information, and it's already done. So what happened very quickly was when you save that change or save the invoice, the information to request all the stuff from SAP was done. SAP returned the information to Compleo. Compleo took that stuff, put it into a rough draft, and it sent that information via an alert, in this case via email, to the person in charge of managing whether or not that invoice can be paid. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you that process here. This is our portal that would allow a reviewer, and this is all web-based, there's no software you need to have to make this work on the person's machine. And it can be behind the firewall. It can equally be outside your firewall. So I'm a reviewer, and now I've got some stuff in my basket. This is the new one that just came in. I can verify whether I'm happy with this. Anything from the amount to the PO, all these things I might have to check. I can reject it, in which case it goes back for review again. But if I click OK, then at that point, I've passed it off to the customer. Already by now, two things have happened, actually more than two, but the first two things to mention is that the customer has just received or will soon receive an email with the invoice. The other thing that can happen if you're in a manufacturing environment is you can generate more than one transaction at one time. So you could, for instance, send a pick list to the warehouse to assemble the materials. You could make a label for the box if you're shipping something physical. And all that stuff can be triggered off of this one action, if that's desirable. So the second half of this is going to be a demo on what happens after the demo. And we're going to deal with things like whether it's been paid, why it hasn't been paid, and then remedies for making the collection process simpler.